Hey everyone, and welcome to our Q&A presented by Just Love. My name is Paula Jane and I'm talking to Judy Carroll. Judy is an internationally known author. Her books include The Zeta Message, Human by Day, Zeta by Night, Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth, Lessons in History, and her two most recent books, both of them are Kindle editions, An Interview with an Alien, Comments by an Undercover ET, and Cosmic Spirituality, Blending Religion and Science in Oneness from an Off-Planet Perspective. Hi Judy.
Hi Paula, and hi everyone.
In our last few episodes, we have been covering a lot of what Judy has written in her book Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth, especially with regards to how we came to be here on this beautiful planet and how the control that was there from the very beginning is playing out now at its finest. So this leads us to a discussion today that we would like to have, and that is how this control is being orchestrated from Earth and from within the dimensions on Earth and is not coming from off-planet. To the contrary, off-planet beings are here to assist us in this time of the Great Awakening, and as our consciousness expands more and more off-planet beings are coming in to assist. So Judy, can you talk to us on this?
Yes, Paula, there's just so much disinformation being put out about so-called evil aliens abducting people and planning to invade Earth. But the thing is, planets such as Earth that support a human population are protected from outside interference by an energy field surrounding the planet like an aura. This energy field allows higher evolved beings in, but blocks lower interference. All negative interference and control that's happening on Earth, both now and in the past, is coming from right here, orchestrated by a more ancient Earth-human culture that I call the Repterrans. Many of these ones are now incarnating as perfectly normal-looking modern-day humans.
So they're human beings with a Repterran consciousness?
Yes, they're still part of the Repterran consciousness and still very much in control down here. They were the force behind the Nazi regime, and their base was and still is a lower dimension of Earth that the Nazis called the Inner Earth. Hitler sent expeditions out to find an entrance to this place.
So Hitler knew about the Inner Earth but didn't know where it was?
Exactly. The Nazi Party began its life as a political arm of the Thule Society, which was founded in 1910 by Felix Nedner and closely connected to the Vril Society, both of them being connected to the Inner Earth Repterrans. There were underground versions of these groups in Japan, known as the Black Dragons and the Green Dragons, which were also backed by the Repterrans. These groups were behind Japan's entry into World War II. The link between the two groups, Japanese and Northern European, was a man by the name of Karl Haushofer. The story of this is told in two books, Secret Journey to Planet Serpo by Len Kasten and The Nazis and the Supernatural by Michael Fitzgerald.
So World War II was driven by the Repterran Controllers, no surprises there.
Absolutely. They're the driving force behind all political and religious extremism on Earth. One of their main agendas is promoting war and racism in order to divide and conquer. This is so obvious in today's society. In the Fitzgerald book, it's told how Hitler was trained by the Thule Society and the Vril Society in techniques of occult concentration, visualization, and of developing the power to direct his will to influence events and other people. Mind control, in other words. It was these groups that promoted and continue to promote the concept of the Aryan Ideal, a master race of tall, blonde, blue-eyed humans to rule the world. This did not end with World War II.
No, this is still going on right now, hence all the racism on the planet.
Yes, and this Aryan Ideal concept is a creation of the Repterran Controllers who do not want higher off-planet intervention of their continuing control over humanity.
Because this will interfere with their ultimate plan.
Precisely. And this has had huge influence on the whole ET contact scenario right from the end of World War II. It began with the George Adamski contacts of the 1950s, 1960s, and has continued. It's no coincidence that the ship photographed by Adamski bears a striking resemblance to the anti-gravity ships built by the Nazis. It was actually these interdimensionals contacting him and posing as ETs, as they still do.
Okay, so what do you mean that it's no coincidence that the ship photographed by Adamski bears a striking resemblance to the anti-gravity ships built by the Nazis?
The Repterrans are the ones who gave the Nazis this technology, and the ship seen by Adamski was one of these. Adamski pulled huge crowds on his world tours, lecturing about these very human-looking beings who claimed to be from off-planet. I can't recall exactly, but I think they claimed to be Venusians. Of course, they kept their real Earth plane origins secret. A very well-organised disinformation campaign began back then to promote the Aryan Ideal master race, who were not from off-planet but rather from right here on Earth, and to demonise the genuine off-planet Theta Greys and Mantids. I read an article some years ago that was published in the Journal of an ET research group that's very supportive of the George Adamski material. This article was written by one of Adamski's associates, and it spoke of how Adamski's off-planet contacts were beautiful human-looking beings, not a bit like the bug-eyed monsters that are being reported now. It was obviously the Greys he was referring to. I mean to say, how racist can you get?
Yeah, they were demonising the genuine off-planet help who are not tall, blonde and blue-eyed because they'll interfere with their plan.
Exactly. That's the last thing they want. And so we have tall, blonde, blue-eyed space brothers, angels and Pleiadians putting out messages of fear and disinformation on the genuine ETs. This is not to say that there aren't genuine Pleiadians and others making contact, but the genuine ones work in oneness with the Zetas and Mantids. As we explained in our last episode, the story of the serpent in the Garden of Eden tells of the Repterran interference when rescuers arrived from off-planet to try to help the mixtures, the slave species that had been created by the Repterran Controllers. The rescue mission involved a number of off-planet cultures, including Pleiadians, Lyrans, Syrians, Zetas and off-planet reptoids, all working together to try to free the mixtures from enslavement by genetically upgrading them. This ended in a major battle to drive these ones away, which is exactly what is still happening today. This is what the drive to weaponise space is really all about, keeping the genuine ETs away to stop their intervention.
Yeah, because they're still trying to help us.
Yes, and the off-planet Zetas and Mantid Greys are the main group trying to assist humanity to be free of the controllers. Hence, they're the group most targeted by the disinformation campaign.
Yeah.
The Pleiadians also sometimes use the semi-artificial grey containers as sort of spacesuits to protect themselves from the harshness of some of the environments down here. Some years ago, one of my off-planet colleagues living down here emailed me in great distress after being abused for being a grey. The person who abused her, who was a pro-Pleiadian but anti-grey, talked about the 24,000 greys who were said to have done something terrible down here sometime in the past. Neither of us had any idea what this was about, so I googled it. From what I gathered, it seemed to be about a time, presumably in the late 1950s or thereabouts, when the Greys are said to have approached the United States government for permission to abduct Earth humans to harvest genetic material to enable their race to survive. The story goes that they were only supposed to work with a restricted number of Earth humans, but instead broke the treaty and began a campaign of mass abductions, harvesting blood, glandular secretions, etc., from both humans and animals. It was also claimed that the Greys intend to take over the Earth.
It sounds all a bit bizarre.
As a dual-soul grey Earth human, all I can say is there's a tiny grain of truth in this, but the majority is absolute nonsense. And in fact, the taking of blood, glandular secretions, etc., started in the Nazi regime and was done by the Repterrans.
Done by the Repterrans, not the Greys.
Yes, and I believe this still continues to the present day. The animal mutilations are the same. Despite claims made by some researchers, this is not the Greys doing this, but rather the Repterran group right here on Earth who do have the technology to carry out this sort of thing. There's a very interesting story in Michael Hesseman and Philip Mantle's book entitled Beyond Roswell. On pages 112 to 116 is information that was put out from various people involved with the retrieval and examination of both living and dead ETs taken from crashed ships in the 1940s and 1950s. All of this information, though questioned and even ridiculed at the time, is reasonably accurate and casts the ETs in a non-threatening light. However, as is also explained in this book, back in the 1970s or thereabouts, a person by the name of William Milton Cooper appeared on the scene. He made a very questionable claim that, having been in the Navy in 1971 as a quartermaster, and having read all of this earlier material on the ETs, he'd been singled out to brief the commander of the Pacific Fleet, and that in order to be able to do this, he'd received all the necessary documents from Washington pertaining to ET contact. This was a ludicrous claim, but instead of being asked to produce evidence of this, he managed to carry on, speaking in front of overflowing auditoriums, just like George Adamski, obviously making a lot of money out of it, and elaborating and enhancing his story with each lecture that he gave. As the lectures progressed, the ETs suddenly became cosmic vampires who nourished themselves on the body fluids of humans and were preparing to take over the Earth. William Milton Cooper also claimed that the United States government had aligned themselves with them and had sold land and people to them in exchange for technology. This seems to have been where the story of the 24,000 Greys has originated, as a money-making venture by William Milton Cooper. But from what I understand, he was just part of a much bigger disinformation campaign to demonise the Greys that was being put in place right back then.
So in other words, a very damaging disinformation campaign to cause people to hate and fear the very ones who are here to help free humanity.
Definitely. On this note, I also think I found out who the disinformation agent was who supplied Lawrence Spencer with the information presented in his alien interview book. Not naming names, as I don't want to land myself in trouble, I recently read some information put out by this so-called military whistleblower back in 1992, in which he used the term doll bodies for the partly artificial containers used by the Greys. This is one of the terms that made me question the authenticity of the material presented in the original alien interview book, supposedly sent by the military nurse Matilda McElroy. This is what prompted me to write the commentary on it.
So this is your recently released book entitled An Interview with an Alien, Comments by an Undercover ET, right?
Yes, that's it. And like my other books, I've written this commentary from the ET perspective to try to clarify the information and present a more accurate picture than that presented in the original. Okay, Paula, just to finish off on a brighter and more positive note, you found a nice passage given to me by my tall grey teacher Maris way back in the 1990s. Now, I've worked with Maris and been lovingly guided by him since early childhood, and can assure listeners that he does not extract blood and other body fluids from humans or animals. All I can say to that is yuck. The genuine Greys are strictly vegetarian and abhor the killing of any creatures, human or animal. Makes our blood run cold just to think about it.
So yes, we thought we would end by sharing this very beautiful message from Maris. In this message, Maris reminds us how the light of oneness shines forth from everyone with whom we share our Mother Earth. He reminds us that we are held, we are looked after, our off-planet brothers and sisters are looking over us, and he gives us some really good advice on how we can navigate these times, these difficult times here on Earth.
Okay, here's the message from Maris, and it's entitled Difficulties of Life. Dear friends, we know that it is not always easy to live in your world, surrounded as you are by the often negative aspects of life upon a planet such as Earth, with many lost souls who do not strive for peace and harmony within. But if you are able to cultivate love, empathy and goodwill towards others in your own heart, it will then overflow to the hearts and minds of those around you. Please understand that there are many good people in all cultures and truly spiritual followers of all religions. Most human hatred and prejudice stems from misunderstanding and ignorance. Do not be ever ready to criticise and judge, but rather learn to listen and try to understand the way others think and the reasons for their being. Cast aside your veil of ignorance and your blindfold of intolerance, and try just a little to see things through the eyes of others. All are children of God. All are an essential and important part of universal oneness, and each and every one is a unique and special member of the family of humanity, and really not so very different from one another. All must dwell upon your beautiful planet Earth, and to do so in peace and harmony begins within the heart of every single one of you. So in these difficult times of turmoil and trouble, please try just a little harder. For when your friends on higher levels of reality look down upon you and perceive your blindness to the light of oneness which shines forth from others who share your world, we feel much sadness. For your intolerance and ignorance only serve to cripple and hold your own spiritual progress, which is the very last thing we wish for you.
Yes, very apt for these not so easy times that we're navigating. Timely message indeed. So thank you so much, Judy, and thank you, Maris. So just letting all of our listeners know that Judy's books are available from Amazon, or you can go directly through the link below. Thank you so much for listening, and sending you all so much love. Bye for now.